Hi, welcome to the recap of the alphabet and the Dutch sounds. This section is aimed to give you a glimpse into the sound inventory of the Dutch language, so you can kind of get used to what sounds are used in Dutch and how they differ from other languages. And furthermore, to kind of make you able to sound out Dutch words when reading them, and to be able to kind of transcribe them when you hear them. Now, this won't go perfectly, of course, in one go, but this is a very useful skill to have, and will make the rest of the course a lot easier. So, without further ado, let's first go into the alphabet. As you can see, the Dutch language uses the Latin alphabet, used by pretty much every language in Europe, except for the ones that use Cyrillic alphabet and Greek. Dutch doesn't really use diareses or circles or slashes through letters, with one exception we will see later in the second lecture. Going through this alphabet, you can see I marked the letters that are pronounced differently than they are in English. So for the ones that you can see here, you can assume that they are pronounced the same as in English. Don't worry, I'll still go through them, but this is just a glimpse of how it differs. As you see here, it doesn't seem that different, but there are some useful cases. But before that, I quickly want to go make a detour into an explanation about the International Phonetic Alphabet. Now, this is, again, optional, as it says here in the title, but I think it is a very useful tool that you can use if you want to. So the International Phonetic Alphabet is a system for categorizing sounds across all languages. And they do this by assigning each distinct sound a distinct letter. Now, many languages, like English or whatever, like every single language almost in the world, uses more than one sound per letter. My favorite example is the English word independence, which has 4 E's, which are all pronounced in a different way. Dutch is no exception, although Dutch is a lot more consistent with its spelling rules. So this will give you, I hope, an easier time with pronouncing them than in English. Again, the IPA transcription will be provided for most words, but it is optional to learn or to pay attention to. I will just vaguely gesture to it sometimes. But if you are able to kind of understand this, then just looking at the IPA transcription, you will be able to tell how the sound is pronounced, regardless of the language, or almost regardless of the language. Of course, there are some subtleties that such transcription can't provide, but it does do a pretty good job. For example, here we have the transcription of the English word high. So the sound for H is just an H. And the letter I is a combination of the sound A and I. High, high. Great. Here is the Dutch word gaat. The G is transcribed with this kai. The A sound is transcribed with an A with a colon next to it, which means it's longer. And the T sound is just a T. Pretty easy, right? What you need to know about this transcription language is that the slashes means that there's an IPA transcription. Colon, or maybe these pointy colons sometimes, mean that the sound is longer. So the difference between the A with a colon and the A without a colon. With a colon would be pronounced A, and without the colon would be pronounced A. Just shorter or longer. A apostrophe means that it is the start of a stressed syllable. Single words are almost always stressed, so high and gaat are stressed. So they're usually left out there. Ho. But for longer words, this is useful to know where the emphasis of the word lies. This is all explained in more detail in Appendix B of your booklet. For the basic beginner's course. If you're in the advanced course, you should also have access to the beginner's course booklet. So please have a look there if you are interested in this. If you're not, then don't. In the advanced course, we will do less with this. That's all for now. explanation about Appendix B, there is a comparison of every letter in Dutch and its IPA transcription and how it is pronounced in different languages. So there's a comparison with the sounds in Dutch with English, German, French, Spanish, and Mandarin, which in my experience are the languages that are most spoken by students of this course. So have a look there, see if it works out for you. If not, just ignore it. But this might be a nice extra skill to pick up. And this can be a very useful one. Moving on, I will first treat the medeklinkers or consonants in Dutch, because those are easier. Most of them, in fact, are the same as in English, as I already mentioned. I will quickly go through them, in case you forgot how to pronounce them. I will just, from left to right, pronounce them. B, S, or K. D, F, H, K, L, M, N, P, K, S, T, V, X. Yeah. Y, usually. Z, N, Nk. The same as in English, you know how to pronounce these, but it's just useful to know. When it gets interesting is the ones that are different from English. For instance, the letter G. In Dutch, this is never pronounced as the G in great or in giant, except for in English loanwords such as goal. If it is in the Dutch word, it is always pronounced as either G or J. So these words would be pronounced gat or gat. The harsh pronunciation is used almost is used in the northern Netherlands, which is basically the Netherlands excluding North Brabant and Limburg. And the J pronunciation is more common in North Brabant, Limburg, and Flanders, the northern region of Belgium. Both of these are perfectly fine. Pick what you like. The G sound is a bit more common, and the G is transcribed with this chi. The transcriptions are always given as chi, but you can substitute this with the sound that y is. So pick your poison. Try to develop a G if you want, but you can go with a y if you want. The second one that is different is the J. In Dutch is never pronounced as the J in jam, except for in English loanwords again, such as DJ. Instead, the J is always pronounced as Y, like the English Y in you. So this word here is not pronounced as jat, but as jat. That's basically it. And it is transcribed with the J symbol in IPA. The Dutch R is pretty interesting because there's three different pronunciations, which I will deem respectively from left to right in the IPA spelling: the front R, the back R, and the English R. The front R is the proper R. It is the one that's recommended by Dutch language institutions and quite common. It's what you hear newscasters say usually, and it is made by trilling your tongue on the behind your teeth, identical to how you would pronounce an R in Italian or in Spanish, but maybe a bit shorter. Unfortunately, I am not able to pronounce this R. I can't speak proper Dutch that well. So this is what my impression of that is. It's getting there. I'm actually practicing very hard to try to do that. If you can, try to pronounce your R's like that. If you can't, the next option is the back R, which is made by trilling your uvula, the thing dangling in the back of the throat, to pronounce an R sound. And it sounds like r, r. This is the R that I use. It is very common in Utrecht and in the middle of Netherlands. And it's becoming a very common way to pronounce the R. If you can, pronounce the R like this. If you can't, and you can't do the front trill either, you can try the next one, which is what I call the English R. It is slightly different from how you pronounce the R in English, but it is similar enough that I will call it like that. It is pronounced like r, r. This pronunciation of the R is very common and almost exclusively localized to a region to the west of Utrecht called het Gooi. But it is also very common at the end of words. So a word that illustrates this well is the word for weird in Dutch, which is raar, spelled R-A-A-R. And most Dutch speakers, me included, would not pronounce the last R as the front or the back R, but as the English R. So I would not usually say raar, because that would be a lot of effort for me. I would say raar, raar. Not that much emphasis on the back R, raar. I would say like that. So pick your poison here. If you want to, you can make the back R an R as well. Just don't mix them too much. So mixing your front R's with back R's is a bit weird. And making the last R in a word the back R or the front R is also kind of weird if you do the first R as an English R. So don't say things like raar, raar. That's kind of weird. The next letter that's kind of different is the W. So in English, the W is pronounced like w, and that word would be pronounced like what if we had an H. In Dutch, the W is pronounced a lot more similar to a V, and it's pronounced like v, v. This word would be pronounced as wat, wat. It is slightly different from a V in that it is less aspiration, and you kind of move your lip while you're saying it. So a V is kind of static, and a V, kind of move your lip across your front teeth. If this is difficult for you, you can pronounce this as a V. Just try to aspirate a lot less. So instead of saying V, say V, and try to make it shorter. V, 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 wat. And then you're almost there. This might be a bit difficult, but just remember that you don't pronounce this as a w. Only at the end of words, like in the word rauw, which means raw. Then you do pronounce it as a w. The last one I want to mention is one that is not per se pronounced differently, but might trick you off if you're sensitive to these kind of things. So the V in Dutch, by a lot of Dutch speakers, including myself, is also pronounced as an F. So this word, vis, I didn't have to consciously try to make it a V, is the word for fish. I would not say vis, I would say vis, vis. So the difference is that there's no, that I don't activate my voice box. So vis, vis, vis. That's kind of the difference. If you don't care about this or whatever, you can just pronounce it as a V as in English. That's perfectly correct even. The V's are just often pronounced as F's. All right, moving on. There are some combinations in Dutch that are useful to keep in mind. A CH is always pronounced as a G. Except for when it is an English loan word, like the word chillen, which comes from to chill. It's just always pronounced as a ch. For example, the word for 8 is acht. Acht. SCH, when not at the end of a word, or end of a syllable, I should say, is pronounced as just an S and a ch. So sch. So this word, schat, and this means like darling or honey. It's not a very cute word for a cute phrase. Schat. If SCH is at the end of a word, or syllable I should say, then it's pronounced as S. So here the word socialistisch, which means socialist, socialistic, no, socialist, is just pronounced as so socialistisch and not socialistisch. NG is just pronounced as n, like in the English word ring, in Dutch is ring, is the same pronunciation. And NK is pronounced as nk, like the Dutch word and English word, bank, bank, nk. Straightforward, you know this. All right, that is it for the consonants. Now moving on to the vowels. What is important to know is that in Dutch and in most languages, again, a vowel letter, A, E, I, O, U, are not per se the same as the vowel sound. So I will refer to those separately. The vowel letters are just a letter, and the vowel sounds are the actual sounds that you make. Now, in Dutch, you have 5 vowel letters, just like in English, or maybe 6 if you count the Y. But there are a lot more vowel sounds. And importantly, every vowel letter can be pronounced either lax or tense, sometimes also called short or long, although I find this a bit misleading because it's not per se a difference of length. It's also called open or checked, tense and lax. Before I tell you what the difference is, just quickly when you use these differences or what the difference is. A vowel is always pronounced tense if it is the last letter in a syllable. And these can be distinguished in 2 cases, namely if it is the last letter in a word. So in this case, the word example here is auto, is pronounced tense O, in contrast to the lax version, which is O. The second case is again at the end of a syllable, and you can see this if it is followed by a consonant and then another vowel letter. So here you have the verb maken, to make. This is pronounced maken and not makken, which would be the case if it had 2 Ks, for example, which we'll get to later, just in 5 minutes. No, 5 minutes, 5 seconds. And it's also pronounced tense if there are 2 vowels that make 1 sound. For example, naam, beroep, studie, and veel. These are the tense versions of their respective vowel sounds. The beroep here is a bit misleading because that is not this is a combination word, not per se 2 of the same sound. We'll get to that again in a bit. A vowel is pronounced lax or checked if it is not the end of a syllable. And those are 2 cases again. If it is followed by 2 or more consonants, here, for example, the word kennis, which means knowledge. The E is pronounced lax, I'm sorry, which is pronounced as and not a, which would be the tense version, which we'll get to in the next slide. So that is at the end of a syllable, not the end of a syllable. And the other case is if it is followed by a consonant, 1 or more consonants, and then the word ends. For example, here, the word het, it is pronounced lax because it is the second to last word letter in a consonant, and the last letter is in the second to last letter in a syllable, and the last letter is a consonant. All right, so that might be a bit confusing, and the next slide might be a bit overwhelming at first, but I will explain everything. So here we see on the left the lax pronunciation of the words, the vowel letters, and on the right the tense pronunciation of the words with examples. You can find a similar table in your booklet and in Appendix B. So please check it out. So we'll go through the lax and tense versions of every vowel so you know how to pronounce it. I will leave some space for you to pronounce after me. So here we see 2 words, takken and tak and takken for the A, and the tense version of the letter A is indeed pronounced as a. It's kind of in the back of your mouth. A. A. The tense version is pronounced as a. A. It's more in the front of your mouth and is a bit longer. A. But the difference is not per se length, it is mouth position. So here you have the tense version, the lax version, tak, and the tense version, tak. Tak, tak. Takken, taken. The meaning of the words doesn't really matter. Tak means branch, taak means tasks, takken means branches, taken means tasks. For the rest of the words, I will not do this because that will take too much time. The E is the only letter that has 3 different pronunciations, namely the lax, the tense, and the unstressed version. The lax version is pronounced as eh. The tense version is pronounced as a, and the unstressed version is pronounced as And as you can see here, the lax version is this epsilon, the unstressed version is this upside down e called a schwa, and the tense version is just this e letter. So these words are pronounced heck, and hecken, hate, and haten. So it's and a for lax and tense, and for the unstressed. So the unstressed version gets pronounced like that if it is an unstressed syllable, which you can see here with the word hecken, for example. The apostrophe is before the h epsilon k, which means that this is the stressed syllable, and then you see epsilon schwa n, which is the unstressed syllable, pronounced un. All right, moving on. The I can be pronounced as I, as lax, and E as tense. Now, the double letter variant of E is for some reason not I, but it is IE, as you can see here. I'm not really sure why this is, but that is the case. If you see IE, it is always pronounced as E. And that is written in IPA as just a normal letter I. And the I sound, like in fish, is pronounced as written as like an I without a dot or an I with serifs. So these words are pronounced ik and hikken, and the tense words are pronounced ski and zien. For the O, the O, the lax version, is written in IPA as this backwards C, and the long version, the tense version, O, is written as an O. So O is pronounced in here botten. The tense version is pronounced boten. The O is very similar to the English O. The O is not per se very similar. It's very in the back of your throat. Lastly, this is the most difficult one probably. The U in the lax version is pronounced as which is really in the front of your mouth. And kind of around the lips. So you get hut and hutten. The long version, or the tense version, is pronounced as U. And this sound is not in English, and also not any sound that's close in English. But it's kind of easy to make if you know how to do it. And how to do it is just pronounce the sound E, which you know, and then round your lips. So you say E, and around the lips, U, E, U, U, U. Remember how to do that because it will be important later. So these words will be pronounced huur and huren. All right, so that's a lot of information, I know, but there's just one more section and then we will be done, which are the diphthongs. Diphthongs are vowel sounds which go from one vowel sound to another. An example in English is the sound ow in how. You start at a, ha, ha, and then go to oo. How, how, how. And there's some of these in Dutch, and we will show you the most common ones. The first one, the bottom one, I will start with that one, because it's not actually a diphthong, as you can see, because the thing between slashes only has one letter. And this is pronounced as oo. O-E is oo. Koe. It is always pronounced as oo. So if you see O-E, it's always oo. It's never or oe or something, always oo. And a lot of people, understandably, because that's the most common spelling, try to pronounce the letter U as U, but in Dutch, the letter U is never pronounced as U. So keep that in mind. Okay, so starting from the top, we have the actual diphthongs. Diphthongs, so vowel sounds that go from one sound to another. The first one, EU, is pronounced as O. O. You start at O, and you go to U. O. 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 This is a difficult sound, but they are all difficult. So I'm sorry. Kind of a cheat way to say it is to start at like an and then go to U, O, 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 O. Again, so it's useful to know how to pronounce the U in order to pronounce these sounds. This word that will then be pronounced nose. I wrote the Y, which is an sound, in brackets because the O sound is in Flanders pronounced without the so they would not say nose, but they would say neus. In the Netherlands, everyone says nose, so that's what I will do. But it's just useful to know. The next sound, which is written as EY or IJ, is pronounced as I. I. These are written differently, but they're pronounced the same always. There's no difference in pronunciation at all. So this is pronounced as reis and zij. And how do you make this sound? That is by starting at and going to e. A, 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 a. This is different from how you pronounce the EY sound in German. This is the most common thing that's kind of characteristic of a German accent in Dutch, is that in German you would pronounce the EY as I. And a lot of other people have also this habit of pronouncing it like this. But I would recommend doing it, pronouncing it as I, because that is the proper pronunciation, and people will sometimes misunderstand it, because there are some cases in which these are overlapping with words. That's a good sentence. You understood me, I hope. Let's move on to the next one. In fact, I actually want to skip to the one after that. This written as AU or OU, because it's easier. This is pronounced as ow, ow. Which is kind of like the English how or wow or ouch. It's pretty similar. They are also written differently, but they're pronounced the same as well. So the first one is ow, which what you say when you get hit, ow. And the next one is hout, which means wood. Pronounced the same, written kind of differently. The middle one, UI, is probably the hardest sound in Dutch for people to nail down. And it's understandable because it uses sounds that you don't have in English or in most languages. The language that does have something that's close to this is French. I won't try to do it in French. Please check the appendix for the similar sounds. Okay, we'll try. Like fauteuil. Well, that's probably very wrong, but that sound is sort of similar. Here you see that it is pronounced as this weird OE sound and a Y, which is U. This OE sound is the in like oeuvre. Again, pardon my French, literally. And that is a very hard sound because English doesn't have it, a lot of other languages don't have it. But you can kind of cheat by pronouncing it as starting with an A and then going to an U. Because in between A and U is so you will go kind of cheat your way there, and it works perfectly fine. So normally you would pronounce it as and cheating you would pronounce it ow, ow, and that actually sounds perfectly fine. So try to repeat it for me. Ow, 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 ow. And so the name of the science park, former name of science park, will be pronounced as Uithof. Uithof. So not as Oudhof. If you pronounce it as Oudhof, then you don't end on an U. You also start on an A, you start on an A. So try, if you already end on an U instead of an U, then you already close. You say Oudhof, Oudhof. then you're basically there. Uithof, muis, which means mouse. Alright, those are all the pronunciation rules in Dutch. Go over this video again if you want. Look at the booklet and Appendix B for a bit more in-depth explanation of how this works. We will go over this many more times, I hope, and you'll pick up on the pronunciation eventually. So I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next video.